vibe.
What's up, what's up? I'm back. Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Brandes, also known as Ricky Brandes, and a great episode for you today. Today, we have returning guests, a dear friend, one of the first really amazing, big names, big guests that I had on the Ripple Effect Podcast way back in 2013. He's a researcher, thinker, philosopher, documentary filmmaker, author, podcaster, one of the most respected researchers in the community, James Corbett of the CorbettReport.com. If you guys are looking for news on current events, if you're looking to learn about historical events, I cannot recommend CorbettReport.com enough. He has done some of the best work on 9/11, big oil, big pharma, big food, big tech, OKC bombing, MK Ultra, social control, suppressed information, secret operations, and much more. When I first had him on my show, I've been listening to him for quite a bit, but the only shows you would see James Corbett interviewed on would be shows like mine. And now we've almost come complete full circle where he's being interviewed on Dr. Drew, Jimmy Dore, he's interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr. And it's just amazing how his research has went from conspiracy theory to mainstream information. And that does give me a little bit of hope. And we talk about that today, the future of humanity and many other topics. But as always, because James and I have been chatting for many years, it's a casual conversation. We enjoy just talking, chatting, bouncing things off each other, and that's exactly what you get today. A fun, but hopefully also informative episode. But before we get into that episode, let me remind you, this is a value for value show. If you get any value out of the shows I bring to you, please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. You can rate, review, subscribe to the show on all the video and audio platforms we're on. You can also send a one-time donation via Venmo or PayPal. You can purchase merch. And all these links, find them on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com. That's it, guys. Enjoy this amazing conversation with the great James Corbett. And I'll talk to you guys in the next time.
Has your guitar collection multiplied here? You seem to have more than last time.
No, I probably the angles changed, or maybe I've touched them or something. I haven't... I know you're doing a acoustic version of the new Kanye West song, right?
I'll give it a go. I'll let you know how it goes. See if it ruins my career. But I'm just noticing the acoustic behind you. It's nice. I don't think I'd seen it before. What is it?
It's I think it's just a Fender. It's nothing fancy. I got it just to. I don't really play acoustic, but I was trying to get my kids in. So this is my idea. My idea was if I put it in the living room, which it was for a while, and as you could tell, my wife won that battle, and eventually we had to move it. But if I keep it in the living room, every time the kids walk by it, the potential of them wanting to pick it up and maybe touch it or play. Because playing guitar is one of those weird things where it's like, you're like, oh, I don't have time. And then like the second you pick it up, you can't put it down.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And yeah, I also always hoped my kids would be interested enough in the guitars to start picking them up and playing them. Hasn't happened yet, but we'll find out.
Yeah, it's well, music's definitely good. It's weird because I'm like, I try not to be too pushy. Like my son's first concert was actually a Maiden in 2019. He was like probably 5. I don't know how old he was. Oh. He's 2000. He was born in 2015. Yeah, so he not very old. And we had his godfather, who is one of my best friends, and actually you know him because he was one of the co-hosts of the show when I first started, Dave, and one day he was over my house and my son was like singing Maiden. And because for some reason I was trying to get him into metal, and Maiden was like the first.
I was wondering, are you talking about Iron Maiden?
Yeah.
Oh,
Iron
yes.
Maiden.
Oh, you
I'm
are.
sorry. I'm not always talking to metalheads where everybody.
Yeah. 5-year-old. Well, there you go. Pretty
Yeah.
hardcore.
So he loved the Trooper. You're probably familiar with the song. It's like oh, it's whatever, but it's one of their catchier songs off Peace of Mind, and it was one of their big hits. And my son loved the song. It was like the first one that really like first song he connected with, and they
Right.
like blown away from it. So his next birthday, he bought him two tickets for me and for him to go to a concert because Maiden was coming around, and this was 2019. Honestly, at the time, I thought it was an awesome experience. And then
Mm.
after COVID happened, I really cherished the fact that we had
Mm.
to go to a,
Yeah, yeah,
before everything locked down for
yeah,
quite a few years. But
yeah.
yeah, it was awesome. But he's gotten so caught up in sports.
Mm.
He, it's hard to find the time and energy to kind of push him to kind of play. My daughter seems to have more of my artistic side where she loves being creative, but now he's really falling in love with music again. So it's weird. I mean, we'll see. I got kind of
How old is he now?
my son's 10 and then my daughter's 8. How old are yours?
Oh. My son's 12, my daughter's 9.
Okay, yeah, because I thought yeah, they were kind of close in age. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So grow being a Canadian growing up in Japan, like, are your kids learning both languages well? How has that been?
Yeah. My son is basically fluent in both.
Oh, wow.
My daughter's fluent in Japanese and her English is okay. Her English listening is fine, but she doesn't produce as much, but she's just generally shyer. It's one of those things where I know before you go into having children, they're going to be different human beings with different tastes and different ways, but you just kind of, I don't know, you kind of default to, oh, they're going to be the same. So when my son grows up and he's, speaking English fluently when he's 5 and 6, I figure, well, my daughter will be exactly the same. Oh, wait, she's like a different human being. Who knew?
Yeah, it's weird how that works because it's like you assume that you're doing everything the same way, or at least as
Yeah,
close as you.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But I guess the equation has changed, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
there's only one, so everybody's energy and love and attention goes into one child. Now you have to like share that love.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of dynamics. I've even heard there are differences between boys and girls, but maybe we're not allowed to say that anymore.
Oh, I miss my daughter's games because when my kid and my son and my daughter have games at the same time, my wife and I have to separate, obviously. And
Mm.
uh, in Massachusetts, because it's just one more reason why this state is horrendous. My wife text messaged me. She's like, "You would be so rip shit right now." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Oh, your daughter's playing against two boys on the other team," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "You do know there's boys teams, right? Those boys can just."
Yeah.
On boys teams, they don't need to be like I have no problem with girls playing with boys because to me that's impressive. Obviously, if you're playing with boys, it's because you're very
Sure, sure.
talented, you're capable, and whatnot, and you're trying to challenge, the player. But when you have boys playing with girls, and then she texts me like 5 seconds later, she's like, and he just scored because they're playing soccer, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what a
Yeah.
surprise! It drives me up a wall, and as a parent, it's like I feel bad for my daughter because I'm like you don't be mad that you lost that game or whatever. Like it's not a fair fight, like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's an interesting conundrum because what are you teaching your children in that moment? You can only teach what the reaction to such a thing should be, essentially.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's weird because I culturally I'm like I just want them to be kids. I don't want to have
Yeah,
these type of conversations
exactly.
too
Mhm.
early, but
Exactly. You don't want to like make them into juiced up anti-culture warriors or whatever when they're, 10
MAGA
years old.
wearing hats saying that thank God there's only two genders thanks to Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's it,
Or covering the new Kanye song, either way.
yes. I would like your opinion on that because in a way, nobody's talking about it. So I guess we might as well highlight the song, right? Because
Sure.
it's not getting
Yeah.
enough publicity. But in a way, it's funny because I always try to like figure out somebody's thinking, like psychoanalyze them, and to some extent, I want to try to understand people. Like, anytime I'm talking to somebody, if somebody has radically different views than me, I'm always like, okay, well, I'm kind of curious. Like, how did you get there, and what motivated those views? What inspired those views? What happened in your upbringing? And with Kanye, like, I'm like caught in between of him just being a complete troll, or
Mhm.
it's some other things happening. Like with obviously we know the music business. Obviously, you're a huge music fan. I'm a huge music fan. The common theme over and over and over again is how it's bad musicians get screwed by the record labels, by the whatever. And I wonder if he has some the same way somebody who grew up in the 50s or 60s would have a understandably dislike of maybe white people because of some maybe life experiences they had, during Jim Crow or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can understand that. You're like, okay, maybe it's not right to dislike all white people, but I can understand where it's coming from because of your own personal experiences. And I'm curious if that's a similar situation where like he had some personal experiences with some Jewish people that really did him dirty, and now he just went buck wild where like it ended up creating this dislike or I guess even hatred of all Jewish people.
Mm. Yeah, well, you're not going to find any insight from me. I don't know, but I think there's a few different things that we could take out. I mean, first of all, let's put this on the table. Does anyone think that Kanye West is some deep political thinker who's arrived at some, thought out political ideology after years of study? No, I would tend to say no. So I think we can scratch that one off the list. This is not some serious political take. So what is it then exactly? And what you say sounds plausible enough, combined with whatever bipolar mania, whatever that clearly he already has, and then with whatever, maybe some dirty deal or something, and he ends up snapping and taking it out on everyone. Who knows what's going on in a mind like that. But I think it is interesting to look at that culturally and the way that it's manifesting because, artists of various generations, at least since the engineered phenomenon of teenage rebellion back in the 1950s, have been always trying to push that boundary, right? And in the 50s, it was Elvis Presley literally shaking his hips was like absolute unbelievable madness. I can't believe the kids are looking at this horrible sin. And then, by the 90s when I was growing up, it was Marilyn Manson. He's an actual Satanist. Oh my God, this is absolute craziness. And then how do you keep progressing and pushing the button? Well, eventually someone's going to push the Nazi button. It's one of the few things that's still truly, really, and truly taboo in the minds of most people. So, of course, some artist somewhere is gonna hit on that button because it's still something that will trigger people. Uh, I'm not defending any of this or even trying to analyze it that deeply. I know there are the people who will say, well, actually, this is all part of the global conspiracy because they want to make anyone who disagrees with, the left ideology look like absolute stark raving lunatics or whatever. Sure, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's convenient for them to have someone like Kanye marching around, under a swastika. But I don't know. I just personally doubt that it's that deeply planned of an event. It's just something that I'm sure that they can use for various narrative purposes. But it's like anything. Like they can use anything for their narrative purposes. It's all about the narrative. So once you embed in the public's mind that, government good, follow the science, whatever they want you to believe, then every event can be interpreted in light of that one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, if any good came out of it, I think, and this is going to be kind of weird to say out loud, but if any good came out of it, it's the fact that I think you're right. It has been a taboo topic, and people are defending Kanye not because what he's doing, he's really pushing the boundaries for free speech absolutists, right? And
Yeah.
and it's like he's the perfect example of it. It's like, okay, you thought you're a free speech absolutist, like, are you still? Like, are you okay with it? Like, are you okay with him having the right to do this and whatnot? So I think that it is sparking that conversation because the problem with free speech is there are a lot of people that are like, yeah, I'm for free speech, but then you always find their line, right? The line that they won't cross or they think shouldn't be
Yeah,
crossed.
exactly right. I mean, I assume that is, if there is a point to this, I'm assuming it is to point out the censorship that is involved in this because, of course, the catchy hook that all the kids are singing involves one word that you and me, we're not allowed to say, but Kanye can say, and then two words that no one's allowed to say. And which one's he going to get banned for? And if he's rapping about killing bitches in the ghetto or whatever, that's totally fine. Awesome. But you can't say those two words, right? So yes, it is about the concept. Well, I won't say what it's about, but I think part of it is this conversation around censorship and yeah, free speech absolutism. And just for the record, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think that's ridiculous. Insofar as if people mean by that, and I think they do, free speech for everyone at all times and in all places. No, you cannot come into my home and start scribbling on my walls. I'm going to stop you physically if need be. I'm going to physically kick you out of my home. No, you can't scribble on my walls. Free speech absolutism. No, what free speech is about government censorship of ideas. The government cannot come in and censor someone from having an idea, but any private owner of any private property can absolutely stop you from trying to exercise your speech in ways that they don't want on their property. And I'm a property absolutist, maybe.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, I would say though that there's already rules and laws to trespassing and vandalism and that type of thing. So what you're really against is that.
Well, okay, yeah, but follow the threads of my analogy here, because obviously, I think everyone would say, yeah, if some crazy guy comes in my home and starts scribbling on my walls, I'm going to stop him. Okay, well, I have a website that is my property, and I'm not going to let crazy people come in and scribble on the walls of my website. What if YouTube has a website? They have a platform. They're not going to allow crazy people to come in and scribble on their walls. Oh, suddenly it's the censorship conversation everyone's talking about. Here's the thing. I've never been, upset about the fact that YouTube had the ability to censor someone like me off their platform. I always knew that that existed, and I'm not, railing against them. No, the government needs to step in and make some law so YouTube has to give me an account on their controlled platform. That's never been my point with regards to what happened with YouTube. My point was always, hey guys, look, you see what YouTube is? They're not going to let you hear this information. So maybe you should look for something other than YouTube. That's the real solution to this problem. It is not, Daddy Trump come in and save us from the bad YouTube censors. That to me is the abrogation of the property rights that I think is at the bottom of what I'm truly excited about.
So where is your line? So it sounds like that, like you're saying, the property rights that obviously we all understand corporations, companies have a right, you have a right on your website. If somebody comes, if I had some forum on my website, people shouldn't be mad if I say, hey, this is where I draw my personal line, where I'm not comfortable with people having these discussions on my platform. But you've kind of hit on it a little bit. Like, can that also kind of slowly become a downward spiral of like, okay, we censor here, we censor there, and then where is the free speech basically capable of being free?
Yeah. Well, so here's the point. People have been conditioned to now spout off without even thinking about it. Twitter is the new town square, right? Okay, but only because you have made it so. And I think people taking that sort of the personal responsibility for what it is, where it is they are choosing to invest their time and energy, and putting that out on some nebulous thing. Well, everyone's on Twitter, so that's where the town square is. So now the government has to regulate it because everyone needs a Twitter account. That to me is falling down the wrong rabbit hole. It's falling down that hole towards the sort of society that we don't want, where it will be that government private nexus. And the thing that I've been trying to instill in people for at least a decade now, I've been making this point, if the rules about you have to let someone say this on your platform were written back in 2005, it would have all been about like MySpace and Dig and whatever platform was popular at that time. At this point, who the hell is on MySpace? Dig? What does that even mean? If you wrote them 10 years ago, it might have been Facebook and Twitter. Now, Facebook? Who's even on Facebook anymore except for people who like AI generated slop? Or Twitter doesn't even exist anymore. Now it's X, right? The point is, the big corporate, big tech monopolies would absolutely enjoy being censored insofar as the big tech legislation and the bureaucracy that will come around that will put the big tech people into bed with the government regulators and create that revolving door system. That's exactly what they want because that keeps all competition out forever. Meanwhile, the BitChutes of the world or the Odysseys or the other upstarts will never be able to make any headway because, hey, now they won't even have the ability to do all the regulatory compliance that's necessary to jump through the right hoops. in order to get their platform out there. That's what I'm worried about. That's the bigger picture of the censorship, is when the government starts colluding with the big tech people to basically ensconce their monopolies into law. We need to understand we are choosing where we are putting our speech. And we can choose to put it all in the YouTube ink basket and then be like, oh my God, I can't believe they censored me. Come, quick, save me, get daddy government. That's exactly the wrong thing to be doing here. We need to be taking our speech, our responsibility for ourselves, and putting it into platforms that we do support, or creating our own platforms. People might forget that the real world exists, but it does. And even if you just want to be on the internet, well, the internet is a peer-to-peer network. It is not meant to be give all your details and all your credentials to this company in California and just trust that they'll steward over it for you. That, again, we have personal responsibility in our own speech.
Yeah, without a doubt. And there's a great documentary called Revolution OS. We probably talked about it in the past throughout some years, but about kind of the origin story of the internet. And OS obviously stands for open source. And they go into how basically all these guys who were creating all the things we enjoy now, the founders of the, the programmers, engineers, they didn't want to make any money off it. They just wanted to put it out there, open source, let people enjoy it. And then it was the big corporations that came and then basically said, hey, we got to copyright things. And I know you have some opinions on copyright, right? I know you've talked about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, essentially, it doesn't exist, really, is the bottom of it. It's a totally made up thing, which takes its real history and its real roots from the grants of patent and monopoly that were granted by kings back in the day. And the founding fathers of the United States thought, hey, that's a good idea. Let's put that in the Constitution. So they did. And of course, it became, as it was inevitably going to, it became the Mickey Mouse law. So, of course, every time Mickey Mouse came up under, his copyright's about to expire, they'd extended another 5 years, right? Well, finally, Mickey Mouse is in the public domain, or at least the 1926 version, or whatever it was. That particular version of Mickey Mouse is now in the public domain. But yeah, it's whatever it is now. Life of the author plus 75 years or whatever it is. Kind of ridiculous, isn't it? So, yeah, the intellectual property is a complete, total fabrication. It's a statist construct that wouldn't exist in a free society. And I know that melts people's minds, and they can't imagine how it would work without the government stewarding over such a system. But if people are actually interested in the actual question about that, I do have an entire episode of my podcast on the subject of intellectual property. I can't remember what I called the podcast, but I remember what I called the song that I wrote about it. IP freely.
Yeah, we'll definitely look that up. I mean, your website's awesome. So if you go to Corbett Report,
Oh, it was called Steal This Podcast. But on the video version, it was called Steal This Video, something like that.
yeah. Well, it is one of those things where like I can see from the artistic point of view of like, okay, well, but you've made a living off it, and your stuff.
This is the thing. This is the thing. I've lived this. I know people who haven't lived it cannot possibly imagine it, but I remember back in the day when I first started doing this, and I would talk to people about what I was doing, and they would say, "Yeah, but you're making money doing that? How do you make a living doing that? You're giving it away all for free? You're putting it all for free online?" Yep, absolutely everything. All the documentaries, newsletter, everything. I put it for free online. Well, how do you make money? Well, I just ask people if they want to support it, please do. And they do. Wow, it's such a weird concept. But, if people are really interested in deep diving on this, people like Stefan Kinsella has done, incredible work on this subject for many, many years. And he talks about, for example, like a J.K. Rowling. How could a J.K. Rowling possibly make any money if you could literally just publish, her novels, but under your own name or whatever you want to do with it? How would she ever possibly make money? Well, it's because presumably she would have an actual fan base who actually likes her writings and actually wants them to continue and wants to see more from her in the future and wants to support her. And there's a lot of different ways that you could do that. I mean, you could imagine this is the official J.K. Rowling endorsed sponsored version of this particular novel or the movies that are created from this novel, and the people who care about that would support it. Um, you know, again, it's one of those things. It's horrible, horrible freedom. Can you imagine if we lived in a free world without daddy government coming in to punish the bad guys? But honestly, I think again, it's one of those things you can't possibly articulate to people who don't want to hear it. But there, uh, uh, oh God, I'm not going to remember off the top of my head. But there's a couple of statisticians, economists who were looking into the actual economics of intellectual property laws and found that they actually were a net drag on the economy. It's not like this is some wonderful boon for innovation, and now people are motivated to invent and to patent things because they get their monopoly patent for 20 years or whatever it is. No, it's the exact opposite. It drives people out of the industry and stops innovation from happening, which is exactly what happened, actually. Do you know why Hollywood became the center for movie making in the United States?
There's actually a good documentary about the history of it. Speaking of Jewish people, it's a focus on the Jewish people who were living in Hollywood. But it's been a long time, so I
Yeah, but there's a specific reason why Hollywood, why that geographical location. Do you know it?
no, I don't.
Okay, so back in the day, we all know Edison invented the motion picture, right? And he got his patent on it, and he wasn't going to let anyone, unless you're, using an Edison motion picture or whatever. So they all just moved all the way across the country to the other side of the world, essentially, to start making movies, so that they could get away from his, his lawsuitism, and that's why it's in California. Um, that was back in the day when it was a good day's horse or train ride to get out there. So they were far enough away that they could do that without being sued.
Well, everything should be free anyways because everything's basically fake online. Anyways, I mean, it's like, what are you paying for anyways? Some of the biggest Instagram pages I've seen are fake AI women, fake AI, and some of them will even tell you in the description,
Yeah.
guy. And I'm like, what? Who's following this if you know it's fake? I mean, men are primitive creatures. I mean, obviously, we know breasts can be fake. It doesn't obviously affect our desire for them. I don't think. It's amazing how there's and then I was talking on a Union of the Unwanted about this, and like Sam Tripoli and some of the guys have never heard of it, but it's starting to become a popular trend. There's these software programs where you can input like your book, for example, and what they'll do, they'll take the topics and subjects that you hit on in the book, and they'll make a fake podcast. So now,
Yeah.
you
Right.
can start a RSS feed, you can use the add
Yeah.
insert features, and you can create a fake podcast with two what sound like
Two
humans
people talking. Yeah. Yeah.
talking,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you put
Yeah.
it up there. You never once have, you don't even have to own a microphone. You don't have to own a mixer. You don't have to own anything. You just put it all in the software, put the topics you want them to discuss, and then you put, and it could be generic stuff that people look for, stuff that people, are big fans of.
Yeah.
Could be sports, could be whatever. And it's all fake. So it's like it's getting to, and it's obviously improving. I think last time you were on was like probably late 2024. But then till now, and we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence then
Mm.
and AI, and I mean, just then till now, things have drastically taken a leap.
Yeah. 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 No, it's crazy and getting crazier by the day. Welcome to the desert of the real, says uh not Neo. What's his name?
Oh, Morpheus?
Morpheus, yes, quoting Baudrillard, of course, which I think we talked about in a previous conversation. At any rate, for people who don't know, the Wachowski brothers, sisters, made everyone on that set, everyone involved in the production, read Baudrillard's simulacra and simulation as part of their. And of course, what does Neo keep his fake book that he's hollowed out that he's got the floppy disks in? It's Baudrillard, Simulacra and Simulation. And Baudrillard was writing all about this, where the fake becomes more real than the real. And pretty soon, what's even the difference? And maybe you think that the fake really is the real, and now the real world doesn't really have meaning for you anymore. And that was written 50 years ago. Imagine well, this is just the fruition of those ideas. And here's the aspirational idea that comes from that. I mean, yeah, we can look at that and just lament and wring our hands and woe is us. But isn't there something that we could, I mean, most people, when it's presented to them in the right context, in the right way, would say, well, yeah, I'm not comfortable with the fact that it's all fake, right? I would prefer real. At least most people would say that they prefer real. Well, shouldn't that be what we're looking to foster? Because something that I've been thinking about is that real live music performed live by real musicians will become more of a sought after thing as more and more of the music just becomes AI generated slop. And yeah, you can write a hit song by prompting, whatever song creation tool, but that's gonna so it's gonna devalue the whole idea of creating a hit song. Like, okay, well, I could just press a button and create one. Who cares? But I can't just press a button and perform one live for you with real musical instruments. So presumably, if people actually care about the real, they'll start actually going more and more to real physical performances in the real world where you can actually meet other real human beings and you can verify and see, oh, those people are really playing instruments. I mean, that's one way this could go anyway. If people actually express their not only express their preference, but actually follow their preference and actually follow it through, we could have a renaissance of live music and performance and whatever else, whatever other real live interactions. Again, when people are listening to my podcast, yeah, how do you know it's not all just some AI generated script that I'm reading very convincingly off the screen? Well, yeah, I guess you don't. But if you go and see me in the real world, as some people did, for example, recently in my book launch, you at least know it's really me, and I'm not reading off a screen. I'm really talking to people. So I'd like to think we're going to see a renaissance and a rebirth of physical events, physical connection, because people will start to realize that everything else is fake. Everything online, you should assume is fake at this point.
Yeah, and I've been saying this for a while, and maybe this is just me hoping for the best. It, I feel like it's undeniable that the AI generated stuff, the things that are computer created, not real, and I guess we're using real as in like physical human beings, energy. It just it doesn't ever, and I don't think it ever will feel the same, and the experiences will not be the same. And we're seeing that. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious when you look at the people with the most followers online in on these social media platforms, with all these friends are the loneliest people, right? And then you look at like, these AI images, like there's something about them that never really look real. And not to say that they won't improve because they obviously have, but I still
Mhm.
think it's no, I just had a guest on and I was talking to him about this, about how even when I was a kid, I would go to wakes and funerals, and I would look at the body and I'm like, it's not like some energy is gone. Like I feel like it was like looking at a chair or a piece of furniture. Like I felt like something. So and I'm like, okay, so what is that connection when a human's alive that I sense, that I feel, and then when they're not alive, like it's lost. And that's the same feeling I get when I'm looking at a Tesla or I'm looking at a or listening to AI podcasts or AI music. Like there's something that's missing, and maybe we can't quantify it. And this is where, like, I think and I keep talking about it. I'm sure listeners are sick of me talking about it, but telepathy, and like, I think it's a missing link, and it connects some dots because what we're discovering is there's much more to discover. And there's a lot, either it could be suppressed, and we've been down these rabbit holes where I'm sure you and I have both pondered on the idea of like maybe there's a understanding of the world that has been suppressed from the public to control, right? To make us feel more materialistic, to make us live a more materialistic life. But I think like this insurgence of spirituality, of people pondering on the like things that you would be laughed at that were like seem supernatural, are now being looked at by real scientists, and people aren't, they're taking it more seriously. And I think what we're learning is that there's a reason, and I guess what I'm getting to is like, I think there's a reason why we can sense something when we're with one another. And you hear about like concert halls, right? Like, oh, the Beatles played here or whatever, and you go in there and you almost feel like some energy, and again, this also, and I keep trying to connect these dots. I feel like Richard Grove, just like connecting dots, but it's with the water DNA theory that Dr. Tom Cowan talks about. I've had him on the show a few times, and I've always found it fascinating because I'm like, okay, he's seeing it from like a scientific perspective. I'm seeing it from like this is connecting some other dots. What if everything has memory? And then you think about like comedy clubs, concert halls, like what is it that we're feeling there? People talk about like the memories, the energy of people who've come before, like being in the wall. And so I think that there is something that we might not understand or that connects us all. This like one consciousness, this one life, this one something, this oneness, if I want to sound like a hippie. But I think that's going to be, without a doubt, th- you just cannot recreate it. And that gives me hope.
Mm. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Will we ever feel that same feeling of a human physical presence from a machine? Like maybe that's the new Turing test. It's not whether you can be convinced when, chatting with a chatbot. No, it's can you feel the presence of another being in that way that yeah, that exists that we can't quantify or put in a Bunsen burner and, measure out, but it exists somehow. Yeah, there's a lot to say there. Have you ever talked to Rupert Sheldrake?
I had him on years ago, and I
Mm,
actually just reached out to him again because I haven't talked to him in forever, and
yeah.
I'm constantly referencing that podcast
Mm.
and his work because I've found him. He was on I think Rogan's before mine, and then got people would always reference his work, and I'm like, dude, this guy is called pseudoscience. This guy was called all when I had him on, people were like, oh, he's pseudoscience. He's look, at that time they're like, read his Wikipedia. The first sentence says he's pseudoscience, and now like he took all this criticism and now people are finally like starting the good thing is he's alive to see the
Yeah. Yeah.
the reversal of public perception of his work, but it's incredibly fascinating, this idea, because for people listening who might not be familiar with it, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with it, I'm sure mine are too, and probably even sick of me talking about it, but
Yeah.
the mouse experiment is fascinating. Same thing with the pets, right? The pets who are can sense when their
Yeah. Their
owners,
owner's coming home. Yeah.
and then have you watched or listened to anything in regards to the telepathy tapes?
I don't think I have, no.
Really? I forget
Yeah.
that you're kind of offline a little bit, and
Yeah.
sometimes things that are well, I'm like that too. Sometimes I go in like different rabbit holes, and then somebody will assume that I know everything.
Yeah, exactly. People always assume that I know exactly what they're talking about. Sometimes I don't.
Yeah. It happens to me all the time. I'll be at the gym and they're like, "Yeah, so what's going on with the blood, or whatever?" And I'm like, "Pakistan, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Oh, it was all over the news." I'm like, "I've been like focusing on this thing, and I completely missed that." But telepathy tapes is interesting because it actually there's or a documentary that came out before that called Speller, and that one was focused more on there was these autistic kids, right? And made people completely rethink what autism was and what was going on with these children. So there were these nonverbal autistic kids, right? And what they're finding out was that it was a mechanical issue that they were having, not a cognitive issue. So
Hmm.
what they would do is they would put like the alphabet in front of them, ask them questions, and they would struggle, but they could spell out answers. So the parents who felt like this was a shell, of a person, like didn't have a personality, they were obviously finding hope because now they're like, oh my God, like my child is in there. They just
Yeah.
can't communicate. It was pretty touching. So
Yeah.
that movie came out a couple years ago, and then just recently, it was supposed to be a documentary, and I guess the woman who put together the podcast put out the podcast because she was having little luck with anybody wanting to help make the documentary. But now she is going to make a documentary because of all the popularity around the podcast. But I'm such an immigrant. Sometimes I struggle to say the word. T- t- tele, what did I call the telepathy?
What do you think?
Telepathy. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, James. I'm just not. I struggle with the
You are a multilingual,
idiot. I'm a,
incredibly intelligent person,
I'm a
actually.
bilingual idiot. Yeah, but either way, yes. So she came up. Happened was she got this. I think she was from Harvard. This scientist who was doing these tests with these nonverbal autistic kids, right? And similar thing where they could find that they could communicate, right? But then what they found out was that they could actually, I mean, brace yourself. They could read their parents' mind. Were actually sharing information. So what was going on? And I mean, like 99% accuracy. What would happen was you'd be sitting next to your child, right? And we would show you a number, and your child couldn't see it, and they're like, oh, what number did your dad just look at? And they could point at it. Like it's crazy. And they would, write random numbers, give it colors, whatever, like just switch it up and try to
Mm,
confuse the child.
yeah.
Some way they were sharing this information, this knowledge. And it's funny because when I was looking into this or whatever, and again, these are like dots that you can kind of connect a little bit because it's like, okay, then you think of Rupert Sheldrake's study. You look at like the water experiments, with like the different types of music affecting the way it crystallizes. Like, what if everything is connected? And then I had this professor of Notre Dame on years ago. Her name was Professor Darcia Navarez. I had her on right before I became a parent, and I basically to talk about parenting
Mm,
because because I was a new parent and she did a bunch of work on parenting. And when I had her on, she talked about how children, when they're really young, had incredible ability to pick up on social cues and just like senses, right? Like as you depend more on your verbal ability, because as you get older, you don't need to depend on that anymore to communicate. You can obviously use other skills. You lose some of that ability, right? So, and then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, what if same way that a blind person pays more attention or increases their ability to hear, or and vice versa, like what if these nonverbal autistic kids, that's what's going on, these nonverbal, like we all, because that's what they're saying in the documentary and in the podcast, is basically they're saying that we all have that ability, but they found a way to tap into it. Or what has happened is that we all have that ability, and as time goes by, we lose it, or we stop, using it, or adults and the world around you says, hey, all these things you sense, all these things you talk about that seem supernatural, yeah, it's fake. Rely on just writing and talking and whatever, and forget all those things. So all these kids who have, imaginary friends and say they can talk to their dog, who knows? Like maybe we should start entertaining some of these things and not laugh it off so much.
It would be the height of naivete and arrogance to think that we know everything about everything, and there could be nothing that we haven't already deciphered. And in fact, I have a one of the essays in my new book is about that topic in particular, just the things that come along that no one could have imagined, no one can explain, no one would have predicted. But hey, there's this bizarre new thing that just we found out about, and it just completely changes our perspective on the world. And we always, every generation in history has thought, yeah, okay, yeah, there's been a lot of weird twists and turns and things, but now we know everything. I mean, what was it? There's that famous story of, I think it was a U.S. I want to say a patent office worker from like the late 19th century who said we should just close down the patent office because everything that's been invented has been invented. There's nothing left to invent. I'm butchering that story, but there's some variation of that. Anyway, you know, time will not look back kindly on people who think we all have it all completely figured out. And yes, that there may be forms of communication that are taking place between people that we cannot physically sense at this point, or that are on some harmonic resonance that who knows, pheromones, whatever. At any rate, we there are all sorts of things that we but dimly understand, if at all, at this point, and you know, I'm certainly not going to close myself off to those possibilities. At the same time, I'm not just going to believe anything I hear, but
Well,
it's the same struggle that humans have always had throughout all of history, you know, trying to figure out what's real for ourselves.
yeah, well, it's funny. I remember reading a study about birth control having a effect on women picking up on the pheromones of men. And it was apparently increasing your chances of mating with the wrong guy, I guess.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of layers to this world, and I think, we're gonna look back and look at ourselves like primitive people who kind of got it all wrong or got a lot of it wrong. No different than we look at like the Greeks as like explaining thunder by it was an angry god, or the ocean as the waves being an angry god, whatever. So it's
Well,
like,
look, I was always a pretty like sciencey kind of guy when I was growing up. I was very much into science and all of that. But even even at like 12, 14, whatever, 15-year-old me knew that dark matter was just total BS. It's like, yeah, 97% of the universe is this stuff that we can't see or experience, feel, detect in any way, shape, or form, but it must be there, so we'll call it dark matter and there you go. What is it? I don't know. But it's there, trust us.
I feel scientists are that buddy that you argue with, who instead of just admitting that they're wrong or they don't know, they'll just go do like crazy shit to like be. I'm like, listen, you don't just admit you don't know. No, no,
Yeah.
it's because so many scientific theories. I'm like listening. I'm like, this is horseshit. Like they're literally
Yeah.
just making this up. What are your
Yeah.
best pieces of work? You've had many, but I would say would be, one that I refer a lot to people is The Crisis of Science. And it's great because it shows how unscientific science really is.
Yeah.
And I think that even came out before COVID.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was 2018, 2019, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I've been thinking about this a long time because I'm particularly skeptical of all psychological studies. Just so many of them are just set up in such a way that it's all about interpretation and it's just there's so much room for fudging and shenanigans that generally speaking, a psychological study, I don't tend to. But here's one, I do defend the Milgram experiment because every time I bring it up, I have people in my audience saying, well, the people in the Milgram experiment knew it was an experiment, so blah, blah, blah. But actually, unlike most psychological studies, as I pointed out in the Crisis of Science, the replicability, wow, now I'm the idiot. Replicability problem, the reproduction crisis in the psychological studies in particular, where they can't replicate 50+% of studies that are published in peer-reviewed journals. Um, totally forget how I started that sentence now. What was I talking about that for?
You were talking about how
Replication crisis?
psychological experience.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. So most peer-reviewed published psychological studies these days can't even be reproduced. But the Milgram experiment has been. It's been done not only many, many times by Milgram himself, who didn't just run it one time. He did many, many times. But it's been done over and over throughout the world by many different researchers under many different conditions, and they've all found largely the same thing. So that's one that I will defend. But, there's so many studies out there that I read, and I've read such stupid studies about like they show people the Apple logo and then they give them this, this puzzle solving problem and they found that people are more creative after they've seen the Apple logo than when they're looking at the Windows logo or whatever. Like just total nonsense. But this is peer-reviewed science apparently.
Well, the human brain can be easily manipulated, and obviously, as we talk about all the time, unknowingly, and you can easily sway people in a study one direction or another for whatever outcome you want, and they might not
Yeah.
even know it. You
Yeah, true. Exactly.
might be.
Are you into Darren Brown?
I know the name.
Yeah, so he was big in the UK anyway, but he had all these specials where he would do various psychological
Oh, I know who he
manipulations.
is. Yes, 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 yes. It's
Yeah, but
it.
some of them are he kind of demonstrates that it's so easy to trick people. It's so incredible because no one would ever think you would go through all this effort in order to trick you. So one example was I remember he had one special where they followed him as he was giving the winning horse to this guy and saying, okay, this horse is going to win in this race. Put 100 pounds on it, and he'd give him 100 pounds, like he'd send it in the mail or whatever. And so they followed this guy who was getting these. He didn't know it was from Darren Brown. He didn't know what was going on, but he'd be getting these tips on this horse and getting money to bet on the horse. And sure enough, the horse would win. And the next horse, the next time, he'd put the bet on the horse, it would win, it would win, it would win, it would win. And he got like 7 wins in a row or something, right? And so so then, and the eighth one, they reveal to him, it's all part of this special. It's Darren Brown, he's been giving you the winning horses, and he's telling you this horse is going to win this time. And now you can use your money to bet on it if you think it's going to happen or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. But at the very end, they reveal that of course Darren Brown, how did Darren Brown pick the winning horse so many times? It's because they picked, it wasn't just one guy that they were following, it was a bunch of people, and they were sending the different potential winning horses to everyone. But then everyone who didn't get the winning horse the first time, they'd eliminate them. And then the second time, they eliminate the losers. And the third time, they eliminate, until eventually you're down to the one guy. And they fall as if they're following this one guy the whole time. But no, it was a big setup, essentially, right? They just played the numbers so that they couldn't lose. Somebody would get the winning horse every time. And again, it's one of those things like no one would think there would be such an elaborate setup in order to play a trick like that. But oh yeah, I guess you could do it that way. That's kind of the easy way. I could pick the winning horse as long as I can pick every horse every time, right? Um, and it's not just something like that. So something I keep going back to in a book called The Irregulars, which was recommended to me by Richard Grove, that was about the British propaganda operations pre-World War II to get America into World War II. Um, one of the things they did was just so crazy. I keep going back to it because it's so insane. But they started promoting some Hungarian astrologer as this guy, like all of a sudden he's getting all this press in the US press as this incredible astrologer who's predicting the future. And he would predict things like, on some French island in the Pacific, someone's going to go mad and defect or something. And then the next week there'd be this story about this thing happening in the Pacific or whatever. And so this guy was building up cred and hype and credibility. And eventually he's talking about how, Hitler is destined to lose this war and blah, blah, blah. And it was like major front page news in the United States. And it was revealed many, many years later. The whole thing was a British intelligence operation that was being run. They were literally they were funding this guy, supporting him. He was working for British intelligence essentially, and they were feeding him little bits of intel, as in like, oh, this guy on this Mauritius island is going to go crazy, or he's gone crazy. He's about to defect or whatever, and so then he'd predict it, and it would happen the next week, kind of thing. So they were building this guy up. All for the purpose of essentially getting the Americans on board with, the Hitler will be defeated easily. It'll be a cakewalk. We should get into this war. And again, I think people's just minds boggle at they had this whole like astrological union that was, having these big conferences and stuff. It was all being funded by British intelligence. I don't think people at the time would have guessed that, right? You would have just thought you're just reading the newspaper and like, oh, there's some guy who's predicting the future. No, it's all a big intel plot, but most people wouldn't think people would go that far out of their way just to trick them.
You ever watch Brain Games? It was a whole series. I mean, tons of episodes, and every episode, he could even trick the viewer, us watching it, and it just made me so like I'm just like, wow, there's no hope. I'm like, if big tech and the government, like if this mentalist, right, is now what they call them, the titles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if these guys know these techniques, there's no way the
Yeah.
government doesn't know these. I mean, corporations use it. They use it with specific colors, songs, sounds, whatever. That old Canadian documentary, The Corporation, remember that? That was a good one. Back in the day, they kind of went into all the psychology and all the work that they put into advertising and then how to get you to want things you don't need and whatnot. It's you almost feel like there's the only way you can fight it is not fighting it at all and disconnecting and just you hear over and over again like when I forget my phone, I have like anxiety for 5 minutes, then I have relief for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
even have
Yeah.
a phone? I feel like you're the type of guy who
I
would.
do.
Oh,
I do. I'm not floating on a cloud here. And the worst part is Japan has, I know everyone thinks Japan is living in the future. It is not, let me tell you. But it is starting to catch up in terms of cashless society nonsense. For the longest time, I was always so happy to be in Japan because it's very much a cash-based society. But in the last 4 or 5 years, more and more cashless checkouts, cashless payments, and now it's gotten to the point where not here in my local place where I am, but in I went to Osaka recently, and there was a couple of times where I had to order. You can't you can't order from a waiter. Come on, no, you have to use their little QR code thing to put in your order because there's no other way we could possibly get the food to your table. It's yeah. So it's coming, and yeah, I'm not floating on a cloud here. I have one of the little tracking devices in my pocket too.
So I mean, and you have kids, we both have kids. I am scared shitless. I'm gonna be honest. I am like the world that they're growing up in and the world that they're gonna be living in is drastically different to the world we grew up in. And the same way that I felt like my parents, as my listeners know, and I'm sure you do too, like I was born in a farm in Portugal. I got away with like listening to Cannibal Corpse and Slipknot and whatever because they didn't even have music when they grew up. They had an outhouse. I mean, they didn't have anything. So like they didn't even understand the internet. They didn't know the websites that we could go on where we could find, detective pictures of suicides and and that there was all types of crazy stuff online. They were just too busy being hardworking immigrants trying to just get ahead. And I feel like that's going to be me with my
Yeah,
kids. I'm like,
yeah,
what are you doing on your tablet? And
yeah, right.
like
When the kids are doing AI, whatever, and I won't know what's that. You know, hmm.
that's it. That's it. We're just hopeless. This is we're
Well, honestly, every generation becomes. I remember vividly making fun of my dad when, the VCR would start blinking 12 and he'd be like, I don't know what to do. You fix it. Ah, you old fuddy-duddy. But, that's gonna be me at some point, right?
do you try to fight it? Do you feel like I mean, are you trying to keep your kids off the internet, or do you think like maybe if you don't want to talk about your kids
Oh,
specifically?
no, 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 no. I think it's important to talk about this because it really is a question. And again, I don't want to give people the impression I'm floating on clouds and I live in some, utopia or something. No, we all live in the real world where, my philosophy is, yeah, of course you have to monitor and protect your kids and be aware and negotiate all the things that they're doing and what have you and be be part of that process. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to be able to shelter your kids from the world and existence. They're going to encounter it. And the real question is whether you will be part of that and they will be comfortable coming to you and looking to you for guidance, or whether they're going to be, trying to hide things from you because they know you're going to be angry or whatever it is. So they just go off and do it. Either way, they're going to go off and do it. So I would like to be part of that process and to hopefully, hopefully model with my own existence, what the way forward that doesn't involve giving yourself over to the machine. But, there's no guarantees. Come back to me in 10, 20 years and we'll see how my kids are doing then, right?
Yeah, well, if you have two kids, they say you have one that you think is going to be a lawyer, one that you think is going to need a lawyer. Do you know which? Do you know
Yeah,
which one's going to need a lawyer?
yeah.
Oh, you don't have to say it on the air because they might listen to this. It's open.
Yeah. No, I don't think either of them will need a lawyer, but mm.
It's now you're thinking about it. So before we run out of time because I know I didn't even ask, but I'm typically I know you'll offer a hour. You're a busy man. You have a lot going on. So but we do need to talk about why you came on the show with
Oh, right, yeah.
30 seconds left. The book, what motivated you? I mean, you are a busy man. Obviously, putting together a book is a big project. What motivated you to want to, I guess, get involved in another project, and a different type of project?
Well, I mean, the real answer is because I always wanted to be a writer since I was at least 10 years old. I knew I wanted to write books, and I haven't written a book yet until now. Yay! And now I have one. And yeah, this is the product of it's not like I just woke up in 2024 and decided to write a book. No, I've been writing this since 2009. So I've been taking my time on it. And that sounds ridiculous, but it really has been a question of developing these essays and then going over them and rewriting them and editing them and re-editing them and rewriting them. And that went on for many, many years. And I'd like to think that process was worth it. I guess the readers will decide, but so far the feedback's been pretty good.
It's so what can people for people who are curious about the book, what can they look forward to? What give them a little bit of like what
Yeah.
sell
Okay, sure.
sell the
It
book.
is called Reportage, Essays on the New World Order. It is at reportagebook.com, and as the subtitle might indicate, it is a collection of 20 essays on all sorts of things. The types of things that, if you know my work, maybe you would expect me to talk about. So, of course, I talk about 9/11. I talk about geopolitics. I talk about history. I talk about false flag terrorism. I talk about eugenics and the controlled environmental movement. I talk about anarchism and voluntarism and versus statism. I talk about how to really defeat globalism. I talk about the Bilderberg Group, etc., etc. So I'm writing on a wide variety of things. So I'd like to think there's something in here for everyone. And perhaps even more important, even for people who have followed me for many years and who know all my work, your friends don't, and a lot of them won't listen to some crazy guy on the internet, just another YouTube link, but they might read a book, and they might even be more interested in a book where it's like, okay, it's like 20 essays, just choose one of them and read through it, and if you like it, you can keep reading, right? Um, I'd like to think this is my emissary to the wider world for people who don't know about my work yet, because it's in the I think the user friendliest format for people who aren't terminally online. I think they might be more interested in an actual physical book. So I'm glad it's physically out there in the real world.
Well, speaking of AI and those type of things, I do feel like, feeling a book is nice, and there is a connection to the work. And I don't know if it's because you typically if you're picking up a book, you look for a peaceful time of the day or a piece, so your mindset's slightly different than when you're online. But there's also, I've had Dr. Jack Cruz on. He's a big believer of the blue light theory and
Mm,
how, that's messing up our natural rhythms and whatnot. So I'm sure that has something to do with it.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, please, people, he's finally, and where should people get it? Obviously, you prefer Amazon, right? I'm kidding.
You go to reportagebook.com and it will have links to wherever you can get it. You can get it on Amazon. I am not doing this through Amazon, but it is one of the places. I'm doing it through something called Ingram, which is a book distributor in the US, and they have this distribution thing where it goes to everything, Barnes and Noble and Amazon and every other bookseller in existence. So you could get it anywhere essentially. But on reportagebook.com, it also has the ISBN number. This his number. And with that number, you could order this book. Literally any bookseller in the world who orders books should be able to order the book through that number. So yeah, I've gotten several emails from people. I can't why is it on Amazon? I want to buy this somewhere else. And my response is, okay, buy it anywhere else. That's good. Don't support Amazon, but yeah, it's a real book. You can get it anywhere.
Yeah, and it's a great way of supporting your work. Like, like people know, you've been putting out open source work for a long, long time. So it's a great way of, supporting your work, actually purchasing something. I know you also had the DVDs back in the day. I don't know if those are still, selling, right? You still sell those?
Yeah, they are actually. NewWorldNextWeek.com. You can still buy Corbett Report DVDs, and people still buy them, which is funny because who even has a DVD player anymore? But
Not even
anyway,
cars don't even have CD players anymore.
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
crazy. So please, people, support him. I mean, you've been such an inspiration. I mean, some of my most referenced stuff has been from, and even things I repeat, like one quote you said, and I'll make it quick, but something you said, and I repeat it all the time, and you deserve the credit for it, is kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. And it's like, I remember you saying that to me like years ago, and it stuck with me because I'm like, he's absolutely right. I'm like, if you want your kid to be polite, stop yelling at him about being
Exactly right.
polite yourself.
Shut
And
up and be polite, kid.
so it's and then like Mafia 21, great documentary that I remember you're the one who told me about it years ago, speaking of eugenics and other things. So I can't thank you enough for all.
Hey, here's a question. Have you ever seen Children Full of Life?
Yes, because
Yeah,
for
that was a big recommendation for me. I really like that.
yeah,
Mm.
and for people listening, I actually had before I got kicked off YouTube, I had that and Mafia 21 in a documentary playlist. I did weirdly enough just get reinstated on YouTube as yeah, w weird. Yeah. I'll make the story quick. I get an email like a month ago saying, "Hey, your band channel that got banned in 2021 for having Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Mickey Willis, whoever, all those people on the Pfizer whistleblower, Brooke Jackson. They're like, hey, well, we're gonna completely delete your channel. So that means they were archiving it. They kept it all. We're gonna completely delete your channel in 20 or September 2025, I believe was the date. But if you want to appeal it, like you can, a real human being will review it, so it could take 3 to 5 days or whatever. And I'm just like, I attempted to appeal just for the ha-has when it was going on. I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys basically just ignored all my appeals, and then eventually I just kept uploading, knowing it was going to be gone one day. It was gone, so I'm like, let me go through the process. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, boom. I'm like, I fill out this little thing, give them some information, give them my explanation on why I think it should be reinstated. I went to a meeting. Literally 2 hours later, I get another email saying your channel's been reinstated. So I'm like, this can't be. So I go on YouTube and there it is. And not just there it is, there's the majority of my subscribers, a lot of them. I don't know how they kept subscribed to my channel. I mean, after all these years, which was kind of weird. But and then also they kept all my COVID stuff. So all that stuff that I
Mm.
had on there that got me banned
Mm.
is like there
It's
now.
back. You can say it now.
Well, that's the yeah, that isn't it, and that is frustrating because to me it's like and well the frustrating part is so now I'm new to YouTube again. So now they have this new feature where you get a email telling you like how the progress of your channel and it'll tell me how people are finding my channel and it's YouTube search. And I'm like, "Oh, that's funny. That's one benefit that us who've been banned had never got. Like the I think
Yeah.
90% of people who are running
Yeah.
into my videos
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
people who are just searching these topics we're discussing. I'm like, so since 2021 till now, my viewership has been like flat because there's
Mm.
no way of reaching people
Yeah.
and building the audience. And I've kind of just given, I'm just doing what I do. And I'm like, I'm kind of giving up on hoping that like something's going to go viral and I'm going to, whatever. But I'm like, you've stripped the ability for many of us to really build a platform any more than we've had before getting banned. Because now you didn't just ban my channel, you banned the ability to find my stuff. I mean, Google, you couldn't find it on Google. So it's like if you're banned on YouTube, you're also banned on Google, which,
Yeah.
weirdly enough, your channel actually comes up. And I feel like recently it's like things have been kind of tampered back a little bit. I don't know why, but again, I'm also not hopeful. So keep doing what people were doing before. Go to BitChute,
Yes,
you go to all
please.
the other
Yeah.
platforms and whatnot. You probably have like 12 other interviews that I'm making you late for. So I'm gonna
I gotta get going, but I should just say, yeah, for people who don't know, my extras channel, which was my secondary channel, was taken down and then just magically reappeared like a year later. I didn't even get an email or anything. Like it just magically reappeared. So I put up a video saying I will never, ever, 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 ever post here again. Please don't go to YouTube. But you're making me think maybe I should appeal the main channel strike. We'll
well,
see.
what's funny is there's a unofficial James Corbett
Mm.
YouTube channel, and they're posting everything. Your latest New World next week is up. Like everything has been like he's just uploading your work, and of course they can because it's open source.
Yeah, why not? Sure.
But
But yeah, it's weird. When I do that, I get in trouble. But when someone else does it, it's fine.
yeah,
Oh, it's
it's
weird.
not fair. Yeah, we're just. I mean, do we look dangerous? Really?
I'm dangerous. These guns, come on.
Thanks, James. Hey, good luck with everything. Thanks for taking the time. Sorry for keeping you over. And
Yeah, no problem.
hey, we'll talk again in the near future. Thanks, James.
Yes, we will. Take care, Ricky.
Take care.
Appreciate it.